Hi guys. On my last video where I introduced career assessments to you, in case you haven't watched it, you can watch it here. I promised to do a deep dive into the world of personalities and career. So let's get into it. So when it comes to personality, there are two main types of assessments that people tend to use. That is the Big 5 personality test, also known as the Ocean model, and there's the Myers-Briggs test, also known as the 16 personalities test. So the Big 5 personality test, or the Ocean model, is a framework that places people's personality into 5 different dimensions. The first dimension is openness, which basically means how open or curious are you to new experiences. The second is agreeableness, how well do you work with other people. The third is neuroticism, which is how emotionally stable are you. The fourth is extraversion, which is how you relate to people. And the fifth is conscientiousness. Oh, I said the word. Conscientiousness, which is about how keen you are or how detail-oriented you are. The Myers-Briggs test is similar in that it also places you like in within certain dimensions, but it actually tackles 4 different dimensions, and out of it you can get 16 personalities, which explains the name, the 16 personalities test. After taking these tests, you might find yourself described as the architect or the entrepreneur, or you might find yourself given an acronym like INTJ or ESNP, which basically is an acronym for the 4 different dimensions. Yeah. While these tests are helpful, I find that they give a broad description of the individual and don't really get into actionable details that would help you in choosing a career. That's why I opted to move away from them, and the career test that we offer at Generation 1 Africa is actually targeted specifically for students or young or early career professionals between the ages of 16 and 22. And what the test will give you is actionable steps or actionable points about your personality or about who you are as an individual on 5 different dimensions. And with that, you're able to actually use it when selecting a career. The report will tell you that you as an individual, based on your work orientation, based on your personality, your aptitude, your emotional intelligence, and your interests, you are most likely to enjoy work in these particular areas. Then it will give you 5 options. And that's why I recommend it for students. So if you're a parent looking for a solution, please consider the test that we offer at Generation 1 Africa. So you might be wondering, what are the personality traits that we actually test on or test using the Mindler assessment test? There are 15 of them in total, and I'll go through each one of them. The first 3 traits that we'll look at are closely related. They are intense pursuit, which is also known as passion or the drive to meet a particular objective. The second is resilience, which is the ability to stand up and try again when you fall down or when you're knocked off your feet, as you pursue a certain objective or as you pursue that passion. And then the third is persistence, your ability to stick on doing something for as long as it takes you to meet the goal. Let's take the analogy of a football team. A football team has different types of players. I would imagine if it's a good football team, all the players are passionate. They are there because they love football, eat football, drink football, sleep football. So they have the intense pursuit for sure. But when we look at something like resilience, let's imagine that this football team have been having a not so good performance. So for the last 10 games, they've been losing out. A person who scores highly in resilience will come for the 11th match practice with all the positivity and ready to tackle the 11th match as a new game, regardless of their past failures, And they will do their best and they'll put in the practice, and when the game comes, they'll also put in their best. But somebody who scores low on resilience might come to practice, but they'll be moody or they'll not be listening, and they'll be like, somebody who's not happy to be there. Or otherwise, they might not even show up to the practice because they'll be like, what's the point? So you can see how the 2 different personalities show up even though the dimension is one. When it comes to persistence, a player who has high persistence, you'll find him on the field all the time, practicing his kick thousands of times. And even when he gets to accuracy of like nearly 90%, you'll still find him on the field practicing those same kicks because he is persistent and he knows if he keeps practicing, he can still get better. Meanwhile, somebody with low persistence may achieve maybe a few hundreds or maybe even get to their 1,000. But once he achieves a certain accuracy, let's say 60%, he'll be like, oh, I'm good with that. Let's move on to the next thing. Let's tackle the next thing. And that's the difference of persistence in different people. That also explains why people say passion is not enough. Yeah, you need the passion, persistence, and resilience. The fourth trait that we will look at in the assessment that we offer is enthusiasm, which is the eagerness to learn new things or to try new things or to do new things or do things, old things in a new way. So it's basically the same as the openness dimension in the Big Five personality. Now, why is this important? It's actually a key requirement for you to survive in the future. As you can see, the world is rapidly changing. We have new technologies every day, and that might be something that you have to deal with in the world of work, especially if you are starting out. Yeah. So if you have another 20 years in the working world or another 40 years, you never know. You might need to really be adaptive and curious even to learn new things, as opposed to somebody who scores lowly on enthusiasm and prefers to do things the way they know them and not try new things, or even once they've achieved a certain level of learning, then they're okay from there and they don't want to learn anything else. And that's how that personality test shows up in the world of careers. Our next trait is extraversion, which a lot of people are familiar with. It basically talks about how sociable or how you socialize and where you get your energies from. So for example, somebody who is an extrovert will get their energies from hanging out with a group of people. They're very friendly, they're talkative, they like to be the life of the party. So such people tend to do well in jobs where they also get to do that as part of their work. So you'll find them in sales, you'll find them in customer service. They're always smiling when they meet new people. Now, on the other side of the spectrum is the introverts. Not that they're not friendly, but they prefer one-on-one relationships with depth to the conversation. They might struggle with making new friends, especially as they grow older, but once they make a friend, then they form very deep relationships. Yeah, and even at work, you'll find that such people present as managers who call you aside, they want to mentor you, whereas you'll find other managers want to inspire a group of people rather than have a one-on-one mentorship relationship with their teams. As an introvert, you might find yourself in places where you get to deal with people one-on-one. So I would assume if you have a therapist, you'd want them to be a one-on-one person as opposed to a extrovert out there person, even though these are things that are scalable, like you can reduce your amount of extroversion as you change scenery. So it's not something that's set in stone, but it's where you thrive the best. Yeah. In between these two, the introvert and the extrovert, is the ambivert. And this is the person who knows how to switch on extraversion when they need it, but after a while, they will need to recharge. So they will seclude themselves and go get their social battery back up. Yeah. Ambiverts actually do quite well because they're able to relate with both types of people and relate in different environments. Now we move to another two related and very similar traits, which are agreeableness and teamwork. Now, agreeableness is how well you cooperate or are able to work with people, whereas teamwork is how you work best. Do you work best as an individual on solo projects, or do you work best with a group of people working together to meet one objective? Agreeableness is actually quite important if you're going to work in a collaborative environment. So places where even if you don't require one-on-one, but you require some aspect of this person does this and this person does this, agreeableness comes in so that everyone is able to contribute their part without infringing on everybody else or without making everybody else fail in the project because you did not do your part. You might find that if you're too agreeable, you become a pushover. So you'll never state your own views of a particular thing. Every time somebody suggests something, say, okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. Too much agreeableness is not good. On the other hand, a person who scores lowly on agreeableness factor is also not good. You'll tend to find that these people are always on the opposing side of anything. Even if the majority agree on one thing, they will decide to be on the opposite side of that thing just because they can. And they can also be quite bossy, and you'll find them the type of people who say it's my way or the highway. They can adjust or humble themselves so that they can rise up in the ladder. You'll find them in the form of toxic bosses later, where they now don't want to hear an opposing view or any other view other than their own. That's something that you need to find a midpoint for your agreeableness, such that when you take a stand, you take it for the right reasons, but also you're able to see the other person's side. Now, when it comes to teamwork, there are people who can work very well with teams, and they prefer group work to individual work. But the problem is, in a working environment, not everything can be teamwork, and they might struggle with handling individual projects. On the other side of the spectrum are people who are low in teamwork. These guys prefer solo projects. If they can do it by themselves, that's fine. But you'll also find this attribute comes out, for example, when you need to manage somebody and they do their work, they show you, you're like, okay, it's okay, I'll do it myself. Instead of collaborating and bringing out the best in the other person. So also finding a midpoint, especially if you intend to be in a collaborative work environment, would be good. So the other trait that we look at is a perfectionism factor. Perfectionism refers to how much attention are you paying to the little details, yeah? It can be a good trait, by the way. I'm sure if you underwent plastic surgery, you'd want somebody who is focused on the details. I mean, it's your face after all. But imagine if you are in a restaurant and the cook decided that he's going to count an equal number of chips for each plate. So he's busy doing there and you are waiting for your food. I mean, it wouldn't work, would it? So perfectionism is a good trait in some situations, but perfectionists also tend to dwell on those little things so much that they cannot move forward. And that's why you need to be in the midpoint of this. And the report that you get will actually tell you if you are high in perfectionism, this is how you can change. And if you're very low, because again, we don't want sloppy work, this is how you can improve this personality trait. By the way, personality traits are changeable. They are not static, yeah? Now let's look at practicalism or pragmatism as a trait. So pragmatism is the ability to see things as how they would occur in real life, as opposed to in your brain or idealistically, yeah? I personally struggle with practicalness, yeah? So I can have a business idea. I'm thinking about it, I'm dreaming about it. I'm like, oh, this is how it is going to be. This is how it will be, like this, like this, like this. And I'm stuck on those details. Whereas my husband will take that same idea and he'll be like, okay, we'll do this, then this, then this. And the business next week is earning money from it. So as you can see, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you don't want to get stuck on the idealistic side of things or on the dream part. You want to actually put it to work or put your idea to work. And this measures how well you're able to do that. And if you score lowly on it, it gives you suggestions as to how you can improve yourself, even as a student. Another very important personality trait is your organizational skills. Now, organizational skills, I know it sounds like a skill, but it can also present as a personality. In the Big 5 assessment, it's called conscientiousness. How keen are you on making sure things are done the way they are supposed to be done? How might organization or conscientiousness present as a personality? So you'll find people who score highly on this trait. They tend to be very organized, very structured in their work. They complete tasks like And then they're very reliable. Like if you tell them to do something, you know it will be done. On the other side of the spectrum are people who tend to be a bit disheveled in how they do things, in how they present themselves. They can be quite unreliable, never complete a task, or even if they complete it, they don't complete it within the guidelines or within the timelines that you had set. So it's quite important as a skill, especially in the working world, but luckily it's something that you can alter. The other trait that we look at in our career assessment test is locus of control. You can either have an external locus of control, where you believe everything that happens, it is somebody else or something else that is responsible for it. These are the type of people who, when something bad happens, you find them crying and saying, why do bad things always happen to me? Or I'm so unlucky, or like they will blame anything else except themselves. They don't see themselves as part of the issue. Whereas you'll find somebody with a internal locus of control or a high locus of control, you'll find that they feel in control of something, such that even when something goes wrong, they will assess and say, this is where I went wrong, and then they'll work on that thing. And it doesn't even matter if the rest of the world is against that thing. They'll have the confidence to go ahead with whatever their thought process tells them is the problem. So these guys don't rely on luck. They don't rely on external factors. They basically believe in themselves. Enterprising or risk-taking factor is another personality trait that we look at in the career test. When we say you're enterprising or you score highly in the enterprising trait, we're talking about how willing are you to take risks? How persuasive are you? Enterprising, very related to entrepreneurship. So if you plan to be in entrepreneurship, you probably will have this vision that nobody else has, only you have, and you need to convince everybody, from your investors to the teams that you take up to even your bank, like to come on board and take up your vision the way you see it. And that requires a certain personality trait, because you need this unshakable belief in yourself or in the ideas that you have, yeah? And that's what we consider like enterprising. You're able to take a risk and you're able to influence people to take the same risk as well. It's not only entrepreneurs who have this personality trait as a high-ranking trait in their personality. You'll also find it in salespeople, because in sales, you really need to convince somebody to take whatever product it is you're selling or whatever service it is you're selling. So if you're good at sales, you'll probably find that you score or rank highly in this trait. As a young adult, this trait might present as this guy has so many friends and they really hold him to high esteem. It can be a girl as well. I'm not discriminating. This guy or girl has very many friends and they really believe in them. And sometimes it might not show at home, but then you see him hanging out with friends and you're like, hey, kumbe wanampenda hivi, kweli amefanya nini, you know? The other trait that we look at, which comes to play a lot in the work environment, is your decision-making capacity. So you'll find that there are people who are very quick to make decisions. You'll give them option A, B, C. They'll tell you C. No explanations needed, none asked. Then you'll find there are other people who maybe need some time to do some research or think about it a little bit, and then they'll come back to you and tell you, oh, I choose B because of such, such, and such. Then there are the third type of people who score very lowly on this trait, and these are the guys who get stuck with their decisions. Either they really hate decision making, or they will struggle a lot with analysis paralysis, the fear of making a decision. And why it matters in the jobs that you choose. If the job is a high-stakes environment, then you need somebody who's quick to make decisions. Let's give the example of a stockbroker. They'll be presented with information by certain financial companies. This is how they are doing. This is the book that they presented. So they'll use that information, and based on their training, but also based on their personal decision-making capacity, they will use the information that they have to make a decision. Now, in such high-stakes decision, if you dilly-dally, you might miss the opportunity. And that's why it's important for you to know what is your decision-making capacity, like how do you make decisions, and then in that way you can choose to avoid high stakes environment which will keep you stressed. Yani, you don't want to be in a position where you're always thinking about, if I go to work, oh my god, I'm going to be presented with another decision. You don't want that. So that's why it's important for you to know your decision making capacity as you choose a career. The last two traits are also related. That's moral conformity and integrity. Moral conformity is you have values, you stick by them or you don't stick by them. So for example, these are guys who might be easily swayed by their peers. You have this stance on alcohol, or you have this stance on drugs, but when you see a lot of my friends are doing it, then you'll be like, let me just do it today because my friends are doing it. Those people score lowly on moral conformity, but others might score highly on moral conformity, and you'll find these are the people who'll be like, no, as we don't do that in our house, you go ahead, but me, I'm okay, I won't try. And they're happy with their decision, they won't struggle with it, and those people tend to score highly on moral conformity. Then integrity. Integrity is the ability to do the right thing even when nobody is watching. So it relates to the rules of the world, not your personal rules, but the rules of the world, yeah? If you score a low score on integrity, then you're probably the person who takes shortcuts in class. So for example, if you're in college, you might do your whole assignment using ChatGPT and feel nothing, no guilt, no nothing, I've done the assignment. But somebody who is the middle ground might maybe use ChatGPT for research, get like a structure of the paper, and then once they've gotten the structure, then they'll put in their own, just for it to be like ethical, or they're trying to make it right. So they can see the gray area and they're going to make use of the gray area. People who score very high on integrity, now those are sticklers for rules. That one will use the textbook for research, he will use journals and whatever, and then stick to the rules as they are given. Yeah, there's no interpretation, the rule is what it is. So integrity also comes to play then in the jobs that you take. If you are, I'm not saying that you should be low in integrity. Actually, if you score low in integrity, please work on it because it's a problem. We need to do it for our country. Don't be low on integrity. Either way, as you choose jobs, you need to know, okay, mimi nikiekwa pressure nitafail. So don't take things which require you to have a moral conformity or have high integrity, and then you let yourself down, because now you'll battle the decisions that you're making. Yeah. Also, if you have a high integrity, high moral conformity, then you want to take jobs where everybody else is a stickler for the rules, yeah, so that you're not struggling so much with people. Like everybody has the same agenda or almost the same agenda. Like you should kind of lean towards the same kind of people so that you're not in conflict all the time. Like you're always telling people, why didn't you do this? But this is the way it's supposed to be done. You don't want to be in a high stress environment caused by your own personality. So that's how they come to play. The fact is, there is no single personality that completely defines you. You are a mix of personalities, and even the career roles that exist, they are also a mix of personalities that they require. So use your strengths or the strengths that you've identified through your personality, play them well so that you're able to identify the place where they would be best put to use and with the least conflict with the people that you're working with. That's it for personalities. Are you able to see your child in any of these characters? I personally advocate for a child to be aware of their own personality so that as they move along in life, they know, why am I doing this? Or why do I tend to do this? And then they will adjust as appropriate and if necessary. You might not know it, but your child might be struggling with making a decision because they are not understanding why they do the things that they do. Why not help them? Book a career assessment with Generation 1 Up Africa, and it might just be the thing that puts them on the right path. If you like this video, or if you know somebody who's struggling to make a career decision, please share it with them. And of course, subscribe. Thanks.